Some stories just stick with you. And the story of Timothy Treadwell is definitely one of them. He's the man who spent 13 summers living side by side with grizzly bears in the Alaskan wilderness, right up until his life came to a tragic, violent end. Now, his story got turned into a famous documentary, Grizzly Man, and it kind of created this modern myth around him. But what if that popular version, what if it's only part of the picture? That's what we're going to explore today. This quote here, it's from the nature photographer Mikio Hoshino, who, in a tragic twist of irony, was also killed by a bear. And it just perfectly sets the stage for what we're talking about. It gets at that primal connection, that fear that reminds us there's a world out there that is completely beyond our control. And that is the exact world Timothy Treadwell chose to live in. And right there, that's our goal for this explainer. We're going to move past the simple "don't do this" cautionary tale. Instead of just seeing a man's tragic descent into madness, we're going to deconstruct the whole story and look at the really profound questions his life and his death raise about our relationship with the wild. So first, to really understand Timothy Treadwell, you have to see his journey the way he saw it, as a kind of salvation. For 13 summers, he basically fled his old life by setting up camp in Katmai National Park, filming these unbelievably close and, incredibly dangerous interactions with some of the biggest predators on the planet. The why behind his mission is absolutely key. See, Treadwell was a guy battling some serious addiction. After he survived a near-fatal overdose, he didn't find sobriety in a typical program. He found it out there, in the Alaskan wilderness. He literally promised the bears he would protect them, because he truly believed they had given him a new reason to live. He even called them an absolute miracle. But here's the thing. For most of us, Treadwell's story came to us through one very specific, very powerful filter, Werner Herzog's famous 2005 documentary. And Herzog used Treadwell's own footage to piece together a really compelling and very particular psychological portrait of the man. And this is where the central conflict really takes shape. If you watch Treadwell's raw footage, you see a guy who casts himself as this heroic guardian of the bears. But Herzog, well, he edited that same footage to suggest something totally different. A man lost in a delusion, someone performing for a camera that he treated like his only real friend. Herzog really billed his case by zeroing in on specific behaviors. He shows us Treadwell's paranoid rants against the Park Service, who he saw as the enemy. He brings in friends to talk about his failed acting career, like supposedly losing a part on Cheers to Woody Harrelson, and his strange habit of just reinventing his own past, even claiming he was an Australian orphan. For Herzog, that rugged, unforgiving Alaskan landscape wasn't just a pretty backdrop. No, he saw it as a direct mirror of Treadwell's own chaotic and turbulent inner world. And that interpretation, that metaphor, became the lens through which millions of people would come to see the Grizzly Man. So, with that psychological portrait established, Herzog's film then starts to build the case that what Treadwell was doing wasn't just eccentric, it was deeply disrespectful and incredibly dangerous. And this right here is central to Herzog's whole worldview. He argues that Treadwell was just projecting human emotions onto these animals that felt nothing for him, no friendship, no mercy, just what he called a half-bored interest in food. In Herzog's eyes, Treadwell's whole search for connection was just a one-sided fantasy that completely ignored the brutal reality of the wild. This quote from an Aleutiac museum curator in the film adds this crucial cultural layer. For the local indigenous people, there's a clear, ancient line between humans and bears. It's a line built on mutual respect and distance. And Treadwell didn't just step over that line, he tried to completely erase it. And look, this wasn't just philosophical. On a very practical level, his actions had real consequences. He camped way too close to bear trails, he didn't store his food properly, and he got these wild animals used to a human being around. The very rules he broke were put there to prevent the exact tragedy that eventually happened to him and his partner, Amy Huguenard. Okay, so that's the dominant narrative, the one most of us know. But is it the whole story? Let's take a look at what Herzog's very compelling film might have chosen to leave out. It all kind of comes down to this one simple, powerful number, 13. For 13 years, the man survived out there, and that fact alone suggests that there was something more going on here than just pure madness. Yeah. See, testimony from people who actually knew him in Alaska paints a very different picture. They didn't see a man spiraling deeper into madness. They saw someone who learned, who adapted, and who developed an incredible, almost intuitive skill, someone who could read the bears and tell which ones to avoid and which ones had, over time, come to know him. They argue he actually became more stable out there, not less. And this really is the core criticism of Herzog's film. By focusing so much on Treadwell's eccentricities, you could argue it kind of flattens the story. It doesn't really leave room for his skill, and it ignores the possibility that the bears themselves were complex beings who had, in their own way, also come to know him. So, where does all this leave us? If Treadwell wasn't just a reckless fool, and Herzog's film isn't the final word, then what is the deeper meaning we're supposed to take away from this whole tragedy? Well, here's a totally different way of looking at his quest. An ecologist named Marnie Gade proposed that maybe what Treadwell was doing was actually a profound spiritual journey. That he wasn't just trying to protect the bears, he was trying to merge with them, to shed his own humanity and become part of the wild itself. And then there's this quote from bear expert Charlie Russell that just forces you to stop and think about our own values. It's a stunning way to reframe everything. He says, if Treadwell had been a hunter, his death might have been seen as heroic. Russell suggests that maybe Treadwell's real crime wasn't getting too close to bears. It was getting too close with love instead of a rifle. So, in the end, we're left with this question. There is absolutely no doubt that Timothy Treadwell crossed a line, but his story forces us to ask, who gets to draw that line? Is it park regulations? Is it ancient traditions? Is it a philosophical argument about nature's indifference? Or is it an individual's own desperate spiritual search for salvation? There are no easy answers here, and that is the enduring, complicated legacy of the Grizzly Man.